Good morning and welcome to Impact. I'm your host, Tyler Wing. Today we're talking about an issue that just isn't being talked about enough, and that's the emotional and mental condition of veterans returning home from Iraq and Afghanistan. Like every other war, these returning soldiers and airmen are at a high risk of suicide, depression, substance abuse, and violence, all attributed to the horrors of war many veterans have endured. But they are not alone, and there is a groundbreaking support system started right here in Tucson, and it's called Vets for Vets, and a person who plays a vital role in this organization is an Iraq war veteran, Abel Moreno, who has quite a story to share. Thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, first of all, let's start off from the beginning. What branch of the military were you in?
I was in the United States Army. I was in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Yeah, and when did you join and why?
I joined in 1998, and I wanted to push myself in a way that I felt that the Army was going to be able to be useful in that. I wanted to be able to see different places outside of Tucson, Arizona, so I joined the Army.
You joined the Army, and then you went to both Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yeah, I'd been in the Army for 7 years, and I did all my 7 years in the 82nd Airborne Division. My first deployment was in 2002 to Afghanistan, and that spanned from 2002 to 03.
Okay.
And you know, from there, I came home for 5 months, and then I was deployed to Iraq as well.
Yeah, and was it exciting? Was it difficult? I mean,
Well, you know, being in a situation where you're able to rely on those around you, and having to deal with some of the things that happen in a combat zone, and being able to see what that's about, and having those people to rely on, and building that support system that the military instills in you, I think is a very fortunate thing. And, you know, it definitely draws perspective as far as the events that take place. So I can say, you know, it was one of the best places to experience certain things, and was one of the worst places due to certain situations that took place, you know. And one of the things that I cherish from it all is the connections that I made with close people that served with me as well.
Yeah, but like every veteran, eventually you have to come home. How was that?
Transitioning out of the military and coming back to Tucson was very, very, very hard. I think at that time when I came back, I don't think there was as much as it is now that the conflicts have been going on as long as they have. I don't think there was necessarily, not necessarily anything in place for, I should say, this generation of veteran, or I think it was question marks as far as to how long these conflicts were going to be. So in my situation, as far as me being a returning veteran in Tucson, it was pretty rough. Not only was I going through identity issues here, I was this paratrooper for 7 years, was a sergeant. Now I'm a regular average guy. I'm looking for a job, you know. I have a family. Those are some of the things that took place as I transitioned back home, and it was really tough.
Yeah, and a lot of returning military people are having that same issue, but there was an organization that was started, and were you in on the ground floor? We're talking about Vets for Vets. How did this get started?
Well, it was started by our director. His name is Jim Driscoll. He's a former combat Marine in Vietnam, and he found peer support and 12 steps and the AA method to be very, very helpful and very useful as far as how he dealt with a lot of the situations he went through as he transitioned back into civilian life. I'd been to 2 workshops. The second one, he talked to me and said, hey, listen, I really want to do this on a national level. People are going to, you know, veterans are going to want to talk to someone of their era, and I want to start grooming you and putting you in the position of being able to help me put this thing together. That's when we started putting our heads together and looking at what we could do nationally for our returning veterans of OIF and OEF.
Okay, so and it got underway in about 2005, I think?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and how has it been since then?
Well, you know, as far as what we do and how we've gone about doing it, being able to reach over 700 veterans, being able for veterans to come to one of our workshops in which we pay for the veteran to interact for free. We pay for the room, the lodging, the food. I think we've done very well. We've had over 34 workshops where veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan have been able to sit down on a talking floor and address some of the most serious issues that they've been dealing with, and understand the idea that they're not alone in what they're going through. And throughout this, we're building a national community of veterans who are going to interact with each other, and that's going to put them in the position to start taking that self-reflective view on self-improvement, self-care, a lot of those issues that veterans are facing right now.
Yeah, and let's get into some of those issues. One is, and it's a very serious one, is suicide rate. You know, what's going on with the returning veterans, and why?
You know, suicide and throughout the Vietnam War, and especially these conflicts, suicide has always played a basis as far as what happens when a veteran starts to isolate, starts to self-medicate, starts to become introverted with their emotional feelings, starts to take themselves out of the picture, so to speak. And as far as from what I know, a lot of guys are suffering from that. If not that, then they're dealing with substantial issues with whether it be TBI or whether they have had an injury as a result of their time while on deployment. What we want to do is break that up, because that's something that's obviously is taking place. We want to be able to give them directions and where to go to as far as coming to one of our workshops. Like I said, this is kind of the talking floor to get these things out, and by virtue of it playing role in their lives, them talking it out. Okay, now let's start about the self-improvement. Let's talk about what vet center you could go to. Let's talk about the VA. Have you enrolled at the VA? These are some of the things that we want veterans of our conflict to start embracing, as far as them being able to live a bigger, better, and healthy life.
Yeah. Okay, so we've addressed the suicide. Another thing is homelessness. You know, these vets are coming back. They're not finding work, and they're finding themselves out on the streets. What can we say here?
Oh, it's funny we're talking about this, because I just came off of a trip in Los Angeles. I met with a national organization known as U.S. Vets. Matter of fact, there's a U.S. Vets in Phoenix who helps with homeless veterans, and right now they're estimating OIF and OEF veterans in the thousands range. Now, how many, I can't tell you. I'm not a numbers by numbers guy, but in the thousands range this far, and that it's gone to this length. That means that there has to be some serious care and be able to look into it. And organizations such as this, we're going to be able to point them to those organizations that help those veterans who need places to stay, or whatever their situation may be.
Yeah, and finding work seems to be difficult too. Why?
I think, you know, and I can only say in reference to myself, and I've spoken with a lot of other veterans, when you're going through somewhat of a roller coaster as far as identity, some of the things you experience, and then you get this downtime to reflect, I think that plays a role as far as where your motivations are at. And I can't say that's for everybody, but and then the opportunities are being provided for these veterans. We have to remember as a community that these veterans need jobs that are going to be able to support themselves, their family, their financial situations in which they've come out of the military with, whether there be some at all, or even moreover, being able to support a financial means for themselves. I mean, that's one thing we want to be able to emphasize in this community, and that's just something that needs to be addressed. And, you know, once again, at these groups, we can say, okay, this is where we like to point you in the direction of a job, or let's let you talk to National Veterans Foundation out of California, U.S. Vets, a multitude of different other organizations that work with us. So
yeah, alcohol and drugs also seems to play a big role in this.
It's like how can I say this? It's like a merry-go-round of stops you're going to make along the way, up until the point an individual is going to sit down and say, okay, I'm beginning to lose ground here, beginning to lose my family. I'm beginning to alienate from the people I cared about the most while I was on deployment. and I want to take that stop down self-medication lane. And this is something that either everybody goes through. I can't say everybody, but this is a frequent stop that I've heard many veterans you know, speak to me about, and that's something that we want to be able to say, okay, so this is what's going on. Let's look at ourselves. Let's get ourselves that time to speak to each other and talk about these things. A lot of this is bottled up. A lot of this is the decompression phase is not even set in, you know? It's not a lot of self-reflection. We want to provide them that time so that's what happens, you know?
And just the importance of being around other people who have experienced this is just, it's just priceless.
Makes all the difference, you know? That validation to understand that you're not the only one going through this alone. And just like we helped each other in a combat situation, just like we helped each other in the good times, whether we were deployed, and going right back to the idea of a spirited core that they teach us in the United States military, in the United States Army or any military service, is that you have to be able to pick up your battle buddy and move along. This is an emotional awakening kind of process. This is a thing that we want guys to start embracing and saying, let's look at life and let's look at what we have. Let's love our life. Let's love what's been given to us. Let's love these chances that have been afforded to us, and let's live the life we want to live.
Yeah, and just to let them know that yes, one, yes, they are not alone, and two, there is help out there, and they shouldn't, you know, military men seem to be kind of macho or sometimes, and might be afraid to ask for help or think they actually need help, but that's a huge wall to break down.
Yes, definitely. You know, you're built to be close to being superhuman, and you have these situations that are going on, and you being that solid, firm support of strength, you don't want to be the person breaking down. Not only does our organization just cater to, you know, males, but we have female groups inside our organization, and our organization has put on 2 workshops a year for female veterans as well. So we have a strong base in the female veterans being involved in Vets for Vets as well. So
and not only women, but alternative lifestyles.
Yes. We want to be able to reach out to everyone who served in Iraq, regardless of gender, regardless of alternative lifestyles, wherever it be. We have 2 groups held a year for the alternative lifestyle individuals in our organization, because they too have served in a combat zone. They too are dealing with issues that only they would know about. So
yeah, okay. Well, that will do it for the first segment. Hold on a second here. Right here. Okay. Coming up after the break, Vets for Vets Outreach Director Matt Randle will join the discussion. But first, we'd like to flash the Vets for Vets website and contact information, which is www.vetsforvets.us, and is chock full of useful information for Iraq War veterans. Or you can call them at 520-319-5500, and we'll be right back.
It's time for KVOA's Big Game Bash, presented by Breakmasters. That means you have a chance to win amazing prizes like an LG HD TV from 5-Star Electronics, a $500 Visa gift card from Pyramid Credit Union, a Bluetooth-enabled Polycom voice station from Teletronics, golf, lunch, and range balls for 4 from the Pines Golf Club, and more. All you have to do is go to KVOA.com, click on contests, and register for your chance to win KVOA's Big Game Bash, presented by Breakmasters.
And welcome back. If you're just now joining us, we're talking about a support organization targeting veterans who've returned home after tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan. The organization is called Vets for Vets and was started right here in Tucson. So far, we've addressed such issues as suicide, homelessness, difficulties finding work, drugs, alcohol, violence, and that has inflicted an alarming rate of our most recent veterans. Our guest has been Iraq War veteran Abel Moreno with Vets for Vets, but now Vets for Vets Outreach Director Matt Randle also joins us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
How did you get involved with Vets for Vets?
You know, I came home from the war, and was in the community college system here in Tucson for a while, and decided to take a break, as I think a lot of veterans do. I was having a difficult time adjusting to life as a civilian, and I ended up working with some of the at-risk youth in Pima County. Had the opportunity to take the position with Vets for Vets through a reference, through another veteran that had been working with them. And
Now, were you a part of Vets for Vets first, as kind of, lack of a better term, a client, and then you got involved as,
No,
or were you?
It kind of happened at the same time. I became aware of who they were through the job search and through my veteran buddy at the same time. And so I had the opportunity to partake in a workshop, and it just really sort of drove home the point for me as well. And then I decided that that was the opportunity for me.
And what was the hook, or what was the link that really drew you to this organization?
The other veterans, being around my peers, being around people that understood what it was like to try to reintegrate into society. That was the real big one for me.
Yeah, and I mean, personally, I mean, how was it difficult?
I had a great struggle. Personally, for me, I think part of the difficulty was being in an environment as a college student where I was surrounded by kids, 18 and 19-year-old guys and gals that I didn't have anything in common with, and were not part of my peer group. It was a difficult transition. I was fortunate enough to be around some other veterans, and took the opportunity to go out and see a little bit more of the world. I didn't think that school was necessarily for me, and am now back in school through the help of, Abel mentioned some other organizations that we work with, and I work pretty closely with the Student Veterans of America, which is a group of student veteran organizations from campuses all over the country. And one of my buddies that I served with is on their board and was one of their founding members. And it's a pretty common thing in veterans of our generation that we're starting to found our own organizations, much like Abel did with Jim and Vets for Vets, and take it on the ground to address the concerns that we face individually.
Yeah, and so now you are the outreach director for Vets for Vets.
I am.
And what kind of job is that? I imagine you've got a lot of traveling.
I do. I have a lot of frequent flyer miles. I have the opportunity to travel all over the country and interact with any organization, any group of people that either have veterans in their constituency or are comprised of veterans themselves or service veterans, so that we can help spread the message. Abel's pretty famous for saying that Vets for Vets is a pay-it-forward organization, and that we ask nothing from the people that participate except their participation. And so the opportunity to find other organizations that are working with veterans, we fit very well and don't interfere with other people's motivations or motives, and so we can get access to these young men and young women and help them along their path of recovery and reintegration.
Yeah, and it's a relatively new organization. It's been, what, about 3 years or so?
Roger that.
What kind of response have you been getting? Because people, I would imagine, be blown away by this.
We're very well received nationally, locally, and we work pretty closely with the University of Arizona here and their Veterans Project. I've had the privilege of sitting on a panel of both faculty and staff nationally. All the other organizations, we're part of the Coalition of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans, which is about 50 organizations that are meant to service Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, their families, their loved ones in various ways, and it ranges from everything from Sesame Street to Salvation Army to us and the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. So it's pretty broad, and so my experience has been all the way from the halls of Congress to the community colleges and everywhere in between. Everybody's been very, very receptive and anxious, because I think everybody has the right intentions. Everybody wants for us to come home and succeed and see our full potential reached. And it's a question of how do we get from A to B, and the steps in between that are necessary. And we found that a part of the answer, not the only answer, but a huge part of the answer is giving us the opportunity to be together so that we can be in a safe place to share our experiences and discuss the things that we're struggling with.
Yeah, and that's where I would imagine the workshops come into play. You have several workshops, or how does that work, and what do you guys talk about?
Well, what we usually do is we advertise our workshops on the internet, on our website, the one you guys just showed, and by that point, a guy could sign up for a workshop, or a gal could sign up for a workshop, submit their application, at which point which workshop is available. We get that, we plan the travel, and at that point, they're locked into a workshop, and basically all we need is a veteran to show up ready for a plane, and they get right on it, and it's a done deal.
Yeah.
When we're doing this with the hopes that whoever it may be, wherever they may be, that they're going to take this ideal and take it back to the community. The whole entire idea is being able to, for veterans and the community, embrace the veteran who's returning. I happen to be on the Veterans Affairs Committee here in town, and believe it or not, Tucson, Arizona is very receptive to the veteran. I think veterans being involved in their community, being able to have these kind of interactions with the community. I think that's what me and Matt are trying to do. You know, like Matt said, it's a pay-it-forward organization. So,
and I think that the big piece of this, you know, from the mayor's office, we work with the governor's office, we work with the president of the U of A, locally in the state, in the county, in the city. Again, everybody really wants to find a way for us to become the productive members of society that we have the potential to become. And the question that both the mayor's office, the governor's office, and our parents, quite honestly, and our spouses and our friends and our family have is, what do we need? And at the end of the day, sometimes we don't know what we need. And it isn't until, I mean, personally, it wasn't until I had the opportunity to speak with other veterans and realize that I wasn't alone in the struggles that I experience on a daily basis, and that these things were normal reactions to abnormal situations, that there was nothing wrong with me, that I was reacting how anybody put in those situations and then coming home would. And, you know, I think the big struggle for us is, in the military, everything is based on buddy systems and teams and unity and camaraderie. And when you get out of the military, it disappears. And it's so much of who we are. We grew up in that environment. We had our formidable years when most young men and young women are in college finding themselves and deciding the things that they're interested in. We were in the service. And so much of our moral guidelines and our behavioral compass is set by the military behaviors and standards. And so to find other veterans and be able to find other people that understand that it's not always easy, but that it's possible, and that we can encourage each other forward and pick each other up when we're down, and reestablish that camaraderie and that brotherhood and sisterhood that really keeps you warm at night when you're in those bad places. So.
Yeah, and as we were kind of talking about earlier, not everyone can relate to the same you know, pressures and difficulties that you're going through. I mean, you know, not that your family is anything you know, bad, but it's a responsibility, and you have school responsibilities.
Precisely.
Have you guys kind of fed off each other as far as support?
usually happens once or twice throughout a day.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of working in the same office together, and we live Vets for Vets every day, and we're spoiled in that regard. My ability to come in, and if, you know, I've struggled driving, that's something that I struggle with, is dealing with anger when people are not necessarily polite on the road, or things startle me on the road. Being able to come home or come to the office or just call Abel and say, hey, or the other guys that we work with, and Johnny, and say, hey, I'm really having a struggle with this. Or if we're able to come in, I mean, today at lunch we were talking about you know, Abel and his kids and being a father and what that means to him and the struggles, and we bounce everything off of each other.
Yeah,
I think.
usually.
Wow. How rewarding is it when you can make a breakthrough with a veteran and know that he's now on the right path?
You know, that's aside from what me and him do, you know, the ties, the trousers, getting to speak or whatever it may, whatever panel may be, is never going to really be as fulfilling as being at a workshop and knowing that an individual has had that groundbreaking opening, and that they say, I'm ready to live a happy life now, and you just pointed me in that direction. I need more places to go now. Like, okay, well, let's go to the vet center, let's go to the VA, let's start, you know, those are the things those are the rewarding parts. We have beautiful jobs, you know, and getting to where we're at, that gives us back our identity.
And for me, I was a medic in the Army, so taking care of other people is second nature to me. And I know that part of my healing was, I felt like another veteran told me, you found your next honorable mission. And the joy and the relief and the catharsis that came from that process. And you know, Abel said very well, just, they come to us and we don't solve their problems, but we allow them to stand back up on their feet so they can start towards reintegrating and start towards it. And I think that we're that important first step.
Wow. Do you have one quick success story you'd like to share? We got about a minute.
You know,
Or are there too many to mention?
there is too many to mention.
There's a young man in Los Angeles that was living in a homeless domiciliary through the Salvation Army, and we worked with the Salvation Army program director, and he referred this young man to one of our workshops, and he now owns and operates his own moving company and has rekindled his relationship with his mother and his siblings, and is on his way to being a success in life, I think.
Excellent. Okay, the program is called Vets for Vets. We're out of time, but I'd like to thank our guests, Abel Moreno and Matt Randle, for joining us today. One last time, we'd like to flash their website. Any questions about Vets for Vets, everything can be found here on their website. Simply go to www.vetsforvets.us or call 319-550 or 319-5500. There it is. And that's it. We're out of time. We will see you next week.